Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, say hi.
Hi. How's it going?
That was very straight to it. We're
yeah.
there. What have you been up to this week?
Well, actually, I've been on a bit of a break. I went to Minehead, to Butlins for the weekend.
Didn't find any giant ichthyosaur.
No, I didn't. I wanted to go fossil
Giant
hunting, but I couldn't
prehistoric
make it work.
tree relatives.
No.
Basically, any and all the things that we seem to never find when we're there.
No, I couldn't. I couldn't find anything. We did go on the beach, and I did dig a hole to see it, just to see if by accident I could find something, but I couldn't find anything. And I didn't get to go to the fossil beach, unfortunately. But we had an absolute blast. It was a really good weekend. Unfortunately, that is actually why I'm not in my podcast t-shirt today, because
playing around on the beach, eh?
I thought I would wear it just in case I went fossil hunting and
just happened to run into a paleontologist or something.
Just in case, like, someone saw the t-shirt and thought, oh, that's a cool t-shirt of Natural History Cupboard.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I'm not in any podcast merch, but I do have this nice shark.
I like it.
Shark hoodie, which Atta got for me, and it's my favorite.
We need some more shark-based merchandise.
Yes, we do. Yeah. I did see a great spotted woodpecker today, though.
Cool.
I was at work and my colleague called me over. So there's a woodpecker in a tree, and sure enough, there's a little apple tree right outside our window, and there he was, pecking away. It was a male, because it had a red cap on its head. I believe that's a sign of it being male, and it was definitely great spotted because it's roughly about the size of a sparrow, and it had a red rump, which the lesser spotted woodpeckers, they don't have the red rump, and they're about the size of it's a small bird, like a wren or a sparrow type.
I mean, greater spotted are more like blackbird starling size. But yeah.
I know that there's something different with the white markings on them, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
They do look quite different if you'd have put them next to each other.
But very cool to see.
I've not done much. It's been more marking and more marking more marking, but I did have some more, and I'll be putting these. Well, we'll put these up behind us. Did have some really bad attempts at photography of some of the birds that were coming to our window window bird feeder. The usual culprits are turning up: all the blue tits and the coal tits and the great tits. We haven't had the woodpecker turn back up after he turned up last week, which I mentioned, but we did have a bullfinch turn up, which they are by far one of the most stunning finches that you can get in your garden in the UK. Absolutely beautiful, peachy red, pink color. That sounds like blended a bunch of colors. And the only photo I got was this one of it being of it sat on the fence, basically, because the moment it landed on the window and saw me, it freaked out and flew off. So I almost didn't have a photo of it at all, but hopefully he comes back. It was just nice to see.
Yeah.
But annoyingly and quite sadly, we found a blue tit that had flown into the patio. And,
oh no.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where it's either 50-50. They either get up 2 seconds later and fly off and they're fine, or they just die there and then.
For something that something that's been around for so long as birds have as a group, they don't not deal with stress very well.
No, but then again, they've never had to encounter windows before humans.
No, this is true.
So, the wild window doesn't really exist that much. But yeah, that's been pretty much my adventures out in the wild this week.
I tell you what I have done. Shameless plug. I've gone onto Tmall and ordered myself a sand-colored T-shirt with Linharaptor on it.
Shocking that it was going to be Linharaptor.
Yeah, I was on the edge of Linharaptor or woolly mammoth. I'll get woolly mammoth next. But so head over to Tmall and check out those T-shirts because they're wicked.
They are. They're really good. I mean, I do need to get a new one, but I like my Tuatara. So
You got wetter as well.
yeah,
Sorry, witter.
wheat is bitter.
Witter. Borte.
So, shall we head into our news for this week?
Yes, let's do it.
It's the news!
Right. Well, we're into this week's news. Aaron, what do we got?
Every week, the weird and wonderful world of natural history offers up an embarrassment of riches when it comes to news and interesting stories. And though we here at the Natural History Cupboard are a small team, obviously, it's our aim to keep you, our fellow cupboard dwellers, up to date on the good, the odd, and the exciting. So let's open up the Natural History Cupboard newsreel and dive on into some of the more interesting headlines.
Okay. Well, to start things off, this came out literally today, actually. So I was perusing the internet as I often do on my break, and this comes from the ABC News. So that's ABC Australia. So Skull Discoveries reveals giant Australian prehistoric bird looked a bit like a goose. And this is the fantastic story about Genyornis, a species of which at some point I am going to do a creature feature on Genyornis.
Yeah, I
It's
should.
the Demon Duck of Doom is the other name for it. And in short, paleontologists have found an intact skull and various bits of material from the giant prehistoric Australian bird Genyornis, and the findings reshapes what we thought about this 230-kilo bird and how it looked, with the revelation that it had a goose-like beak. So it was built for feeding somewhat similar to how geese do in semi-aquatic and somewhat aquatic environments. Well, you probably wouldn't see this thing paddling on a lake, considering that its closest living relatives, well, sorry, the closest birds with beaks similar to this are things like seriamas, which are a type of goose-like bird from South America. They are, to give you an idea of the size of these birds as well, they are roughly about the height of a person. They weigh 230 kilos and they're flightless. These guys went extinct a long time ago in Australia, and would have been some of the first sort of large avifauna that some of the first Aborigines would have encountered.
Wow.
When turning up on the continent.
Wow. Well, my first article comes from phys.org. In fact, all of my articles come from phys.org.
Yeah.
And this is novel technique uncovers clues to the disappearance of North America's large mammals 50,000 years ago. So mammoths, mecharodonts, and their neighbors thrived in North America right up until the end of the last ice age, and then they went extinct. A new study published in Frontiers in Mammal Science aims to end the information deficit by applying modern technology, and it is worth a read. So head on over to there.
Well, I've got somewhat sad news. I think we did report on this one a while back in February when it sort of hit the news headlines. This is from NPR, and it's Charlotte, the lone stingray, who was thought to be pregnant, now actually turns out she's sick.
Yeah.
So I couldn't find anything as to what she's actually sick with, but for a long while it was thought that she'd reproduced parthenogenically. Basically, she was the only stingray in the tank, and it was thought that she'd reproduced on her own, virgin birth sort of situation. But it turns out now she's actually got some sort of illness that seems to be presenting the symptoms of her being pregnant. So quite sad. And it's one of those things that obviously can very easily throw people. Even looking on ultrasounds and that, it looked like she was pregnant. There is the possibility that there may have been a baby there. It just didn't develop properly, and whatever this sickness was. So hopefully Charlotte the Ray gets better.
Yeah, hope so. Fingers crossed. So yeah, as I say, next one's from phys.org as well. Large fossil discovery finally exposes origins of Welsh dragons. So this is an article I thought we'd both be interested in.
They're not. I mean, dragons aren't real.
Well,
in that sense.
the Komodo dragons are real.
Okay, but they don't live in Wales.
Oh, that is true. That is true. Unless there's a pet. Anyway, off topic. The last decade has been an exciting change of pace for Welsh paleontology as dinosaurs are increasingly being recovered. Researchers from the University of Bristol found that Welsh species dating back 200 million years would have lived in a tropical lowland by the sea. Uh, Combined with the fossils that we find locally around here, locally-ish around here, it begins to paint an impressive kind of diversity of life as you look out from Wales across the Devonian or Devon landscape. Devon horizon, sorry.
Sticking with dinosaurs, this literally came out today as well, and I think it's brilliant. Guess what's coming back, Aaron?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You can actually see it on my phone that I'm holding here. But Walking with Dinosaurs is coming back.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Do we need it?
I think not the original.
Oh,
I mean, we
okay,
still
okay.
need the original. The
Yeah,
original
we need the original. But what I mean is, like, with Prehistoric Planet, do we need?
always more dinosaur documentaries.
Yeah, of course. No, but I mean, like, do we need the original Walking with Dinosaurs? But you're saying the new one's coming.
New series is coming out where they're
Right.
going to focus on new animals, and it's basically going to act as a second series to it.
Okay.
So hopefully it will be the same sort of level of practical and CG put together into real world environments like the original was. So we end up with the masterpiece that was Walking with Dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of the information now is quite out of date.
But at the time, it was really good.
It was pretty groundbreaking at the time, and it came out shortly after Jurassic Park.
Yes, it did.
So it really sort of grabbed people, you know, just as much as Jurassic Park did.
Yeah.
And played an important part, I would say, in shaping certainly my view on
I remember
dinosaurs
the
and things like that.
series well. Yeah.
So yes, Walking with Dinosaurs coming back. It should be in 2025. So unfortunately, we have to wait a bit. I know.
Viz.org again for my final article, and this is a study shows cuckoos evolved to look like their hosts and form new species in the process. The evolutionary arms race of cuckoos and their host birds has been revealed to be a rare example of coevolution, the process by which species which interact closely basically force each other to evolve, facilitating the production of new species. According to the study, if host birds have a distinct appearance and they remove or forcibly remove odd looking chicks, then the cuckoo species create separate lineages to better trick each host bird species.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Well,
not for the host bird.
No. But cuckoos are pretty amazing birds.
They are. Yeah. And that just about wraps it up for this week's installment of the Natural History Cupboard newsreel. Remember, if you guys at home have news articles or topics of interest you think we should cover, send them in. You can use any of the usual methods like social media or email, or you could fossilize your message and have it appear somewhere along the South Wales coastline.
Although we'll never find it.
No, that's true. Someone else will find it the day after we've been, and then write Natural History Covered on it, and then they'll know to contact us. And you might see your chosen topical news article covered here or in the main topic of discussion. Before we move on to that, we do have some news articles that have been sent in to us. It's just these 7, I suppose, particularly interested us. So we will get on to the ones that you've sent in.
They'll be next week's ones.
Yeah. So with that said, Gareth, what is our main topic this week?
So it's bad news. So it's bad news, but interesting bad news in a weird way. So this comes from not only the Smithsonian magazine website, but also from the BBC as well. And it's greater spotted eagles are basically changing their migratory routes to encompass the war in Ukraine. And, well, they're basically making sure that they don't themselves get shot out of the sky.
Of course.
So greater spotted eagles are quite large birds, obviously, like most eagles. And they live in Europe, Asia, and Africa. They are extremely rare, and they migrate. And their migration routes themselves are quite extensive, as I'll get onto in a second. There's fewer than 10,000 individuals, and they're estimated to exist in this sort of patch of parts of Asia, Europe, and Africa.
Right.
But only 10,000. That's quite a low number for such a big area. They are considered as vulnerable by the IUCN, with a declining population in their entire range. So not a good thing. These eagles have almost entirely disappeared from Western Europe. I don't think they're native or would be native to the UK, but other parts of mainland Europe would certainly expect to see them, but they are now extinct. And according to a study published in Current Biology last week, they have another threat to basically, well, reduce their numbers further: the war in Ukraine, which is altering the birds' migratory plans. So each spring, hundreds of these birds fly north through Ukraine to their breeding grounds in southern Belarus. And researchers discovered that now these eagles are deviating from their usual flight plans that they would have, which would be set in the bird's sort of memory from years, basically. And, you know, there would have been set to find the nearest place to roost overnight on this journey, or find some water, or find food. And it's corridors that would probably be taken by the same species for thousands of years almost, you know, to get from A to B. Basically, because the war, they're having to change their flight path. So the impacts of this are quite obvious in that they're having to fly further and wait more time. So the impacts of the war on the wildlife have been more difficult for researchers to obviously track and predict, because it's a war zone. You know, it's hard enough being someone in the war zone, but it would be almost, it would be irresponsible of a researcher to be there carrying out that research. They'd be putting themselves and possibly other people in danger to carry out that research. But I don't know. So using GPS tracking data, 19 migratory eagles were tracked from March and April in 2022, alongside data and other weather conditions and records of where events of conflict were happening in Ukraine. They basically all put all that information together, and they were able to uncover how exposure to an active war zone has altered the eagle's migratory routes and rest patterns as well. So it's not just the actual flight paths they're taking; it's where these guys are roosting in their downtime to basically recover, because it's a long trek from Africa to Belarus.
Yeah.
They found that the eagles flew on average almost 53 miles more than in previous years and strayed more than their usual path. Females took 246 hours to complete their journey, compared to the 193 pre-conflict hours.
Wow.
That's a massive increase.
Yeah.
While the males took 181 hours to migrate, compared to 125 pre-conflict hours. While en route to their breeding grounds, about 30% of the tracked eagles made stopovers, compared to 90% pre-2018 to 2021. So a lot of them aren't stopping now.
Right.
They're just keeping on going.
Carrying on, yeah.
Whereas before, 90% of them were stopping over, refueling, building up their strength before they go into a really labor-intensive part of their year, which is breeding, you know. So they're also finding that they are going along longer distance migratory routes that provide food and water and shelter and rest for them. Basically, they're having to find all new areas to stop at. And before reaching Ukraine, most males typically journey from their wintering grounds in Eastern Africa, while females migrate from Greece. So it would appear that they seem to just head off to different areas during the off season. This could also impact breeding success, as a disproportionate number of one sex or the other could obviously throw out the percentage of who's there to breed with. So if you've got more males turning up than females, you're going to find it's harder or there's going to be more competition for those females, and you're going to find that you end up with more conflict between the eagles themselves as well. So overall, war is a terrible thing for, I mean, obvious statement of the year there, but war bad. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. It's certainly no good for eagles either. So
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest thing we could hope is the war in Ukraine stops and, well, Russia goes back over to Russia, and the eagles can then be, back to doing what they were doing.
Yeah.
So,
It is
yeah.
interesting to see how species adapt to wartime activities of humans.
Yeah.
Um,
And it makes you
yeah.
think just how many species in the past have altered their migration, have altered their areas of where they would live, all those sort of things throughout all of the massive conflicts that we have had globally.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even so much as I wonder what things like house martins that again they
Mm.
migrate from Africa over Europe to come and nest on our houses.
Yeah.
What they would have done during World War Two.
Well, think of some of the cities that were in mainland Europe and some of the larger cities here that were bombed and obliterated,
Yeah.
So they'd have lost any and all ability to nest in those areas. So yeah, I think their numbers would have obviously taken a bit of a hit.
Important thing to study, I think.
Yeah. So
And another argument why wars should be fought with paintball guns and not firearms.
Fair enough. But yeah, that's my article for this week. Do we head into our creature feature where you can fill us in on your species for this week?
Yeah, we can crash and crush for the underbrush.
Ooh. Oh, hang on, is that a Jungle Book reference?
It is, well done. That was good.
It's the creature feature.
Right, well, we're into this week's creature feature. Aaron, what are we looking at?
Well, this week, Gareth, we're going to take a look at Asian elephants, but I want us to take a more interactive journey through the creature feature, kind of like what I did with Jerboas. We've done it a couple of times in the past before. And so, yeah, that it's going to be a bit more of an interactive one this week. But just real quick, I'm going to hit you with a brief description of Asian elephants. I think we all know what we're looking at, but just to cover a few details.
Just in case you've never seen an elephant before.
Yeah. So, well, I hope you have, because the first sentence of this is comparing them to another elephant. So the Asian elephants they're a little bit smaller than your average African bush elephant. In fact, they can still grow pretty big though. So you're talking about 2.7 meters tall at the shoulder. You're talking up to 8 meters long from tip of the trunk to the tip of the tail.
I meant to ask, is that presumably with the tail and trunk outstretched,
Yeah,
or
that's
is
it.
it
If you were
down?
behind the elephant holding its tail and I was in front of the elephant holding the trunk,
Yeah.
we'd be dead.
Well,
But that
would that equal 8 meters before death?
yeah, that would equal if we got that far before you
Being
got
killed.
kicked and I got strangulated, then yeah, it would get 8 meters.
Right.
Yeah, it could do.
That's quite impressive.
It is quite, and I think the most obvious bit is they're heavy. They grow up to 4 tons.
Yeah.
They can do. So the Asian elephant, it can also be distinguished from its African cousins by the shape of its back. So if you're looking at it side on, Asian elephants have a convex arch to their back, whereas African elephants have that kind of concave dip in their backs. The highest point on the Asian elephant for that reason, sorry, is actually the head, the dome of the head there, and the head itself is actually it's kind of covered here by 2 huge bulges, which make it look really impressive, especially when you stand it next to an African elephant that has more of a flat kind of forehead kind of going on there. The trunk is also different between Asian elephants and African elephants. So African elephants, you may be familiar with the shape, the end of their trunk has kind of 2 kind of digits, almost appendages that kind of work like fingers. Asian elephants only have one. So the way that they manipulate their items in their trunks is slightly different. And also, if we stick with the face there, Asian elephants, it's only really the males that have tusks.
Mm.
Females can have tusks, very small tusks that barely kind of approach or even protrude the kind of top jaw, the lip there. But they do sometimes have those. But the males, when you get a big tusker, are, I would say, just as impressive and fantastic as an African bull. And there's something about their tusks that is incredibly kind of reminiscent of the woolly mammoth, which is in fact their closest relative, not the African cousins that they have. So yeah, another difference between African elephants and Asian elephants is whilst they're both primarily grey, Asiatic elephants have a slight mottling of pink pigment, kind of almost like they're bleached in places, which gives them quite a cool appearance as well. And the last thing to talk about is that elephants have 5 toes or 5 toenails on the front feet and 4 on the back. So there's a few differences to go, or rather, sorry, not differences, but a few distinguishing features to go by when you're looking at Asian elephant.
Something I think worth talking about is their foot itself. The anatomy is unbelievable. One of the coolest things, two of the coolest things I've ever seen in an anatomy class that I was very lucky to sit in on, was at Sparsholt College, where was it Sparsholt? Yes, yeah. That's in Winchester, isn't it?
Yeah, that's Sparsholt. Yeah.
They have a lab there where they do dissections of different things. They had a juvenile pygmy, no, juvenile hippo head, and they were dissecting it.
Wow.
And it was unbelievable to see the depth of skin and muscle and fat on the head of a hippo. I mean, you think of the skull, obviously there's a lot of bone there, but there's equally a lot of flesh around it. And it was just amazing to see that. What they did also have in a sort of preserved way was half of an elephant's foot. So something that I think I've certainly seen in a antiques sense, in that things that people have brought in to zoos and they've ended up being part of an education display.
Yeah, yeah.
Is the old, very bizarre, like elephant footstool, or like thing for putting your brolly in. But this
Why on
was,
earth people
I
would
don't
want
know.
that? I don't know.
It's so odd. It'd be like having it'd be like having the arms of a chimp for holding your coats on or something.
Well, those
Just be
one of
odd.
those, the self-charging Xbox controller handles, and it's a chimp's hand.
No, it's a harpy eagle's foot
Harpy
that just
eagle's-
grabs
yeah.
it and pulls it. But the coolest thing they had was the elephant's foot cut directly down the middle, and an elephant's foot is like that.
Yeah, they're
It's
basically on their fingertips.
and the
Yeah.
pad of fat and pad of like material that sits behind it is basically like the sort of cushioning that you get in shoes.
Yeah.
That stops your foot from impacting the ground a lot harder. But imagine it being basically like a high heel of fat.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to see how much of their foot, which makes that column shape that their legs are, to support the massive amount of weight that the animal has. And it's just really, really cool to see. It's something that utterly fascinated me, the sort of biomechanics of their
Yeah.
feet.
Well, interestingly, since you brought it up, I'm not sure the exact arrangements behind this, but I know that when elephants in zoos, in reputable good zoos, when they pass away, I know that the legs have to be, or the feet have to be extremely carefully treated. Because when you, obviously there's a certain way you dispatch of uh or there's a certain way that you get rid of of animals that are endangered because of CITES. They have to be protected, and the trade in their parts has to be strictly protected.
Yeah.
So you have to get rid of them in a certain way, which we don't need to go into right now. but I know that elephant feet are specifically kept
Hmm.
for research purposes.
Oh, is it to look into their foot care, basically?
Yeah, to look into their foot care. And I was I was very lucky in I never got to get too hands on with this element of it, but I was very lucky to be able to spend time with elephant keepers, um, and mahouts when I worked briefly with both African and Asian species, with the zookeepers and the mahouts, and them show me what they go through for their foot care, and it's incredibly interesting. And there's tools that you see people using on cow hooves and horse hooves. There's like adaptations of those tools for elephant hooves, and it was really cool to see them the level of care and how delicate I suppose it's a bit obvious now I say it out loud, but how much of an exact science it is to look after those
Oh
feet.
no, it's quite true, but yeah.
So just quickly before we get into the main bulk of this creature feature, I do want to mention where they are, because when we say Asian elephants, Asia is a little bit, it's a very specific term, but it's also a bit of a vague term. So in this case, Asia for Asian elephants consists of the Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia. That's pretty much their their range nowadays. Um, However, it's increasingly shrinking. It's increasingly fragmented, and those populations of elephants are in these areas are decreasing rapidly too. So it whilst I say Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia, understand that that range is decreasing very quickly. But now we've got that out of the way, we've not done a creature feature in this way for a little while now, so I just wanted to remind the listeners and to an extent Gareth,
Yeah.
how this kind of creature feature works. So basically, Gareth is going to take on the role of an individual in this species. He's going to channel an Asian, his inner Asian elephant, and the way he's going to do this is particularly special. He's going to hold on to a particular relic, a talisman that is going to help him embody the spirit of the Asian elephant. Gareth, would you like to show and tell?
It's the one benefit of obviously the video side of this is I can do and show and tell.
Yeah.
In fact, we definitely do more of it. What I've got is half of a mammoth's tooth, a real mammoth's tooth. So as Aaron, couldn't speak then. I was about to say as elephant just said, as Aaron just said. Mammoths and Asian elephants are related. The Asian elephant is the closest living relative of mammoths, and their teeth are remarkably similar. This is one that I've had sitting in a box for a very long time. Annoyingly, like I say, it's only half of the tooth, but well, I never had the other half, but yeah, hopefully I can channel the power of the mammoth and feel what it feels like to be an elephant.
Well, it may just be half of the tooth, but it's an incredible privilege to have this in the
Yeah.
cupboard with us. I was super stoked when he brought this in, just as stoked as I was when I first held a mammoth tusk. May I hold it
Go
again?
for it. Yeah.
So what I wanted to show you guys is so this is the grinding kind of surface of the tooth here. And if you look carefully, you can pick it up in the video. There are some grooves that are still pretty deep, you know, but there are other grooves that are not so deep. And what this is this is not just a piece of a prehistoric animal, a piece of a mammoth, a piece of an incredibly cool species. This is actually a tool that shows how it was used. It gives you a insight into how this animal lives. These guys are grinding constantly, as you're going to find out in the creature feature. And so there's a lot of wear and tear that goes on this tooth. In fact, elephant teeth, they grind down incredibly quickly. And a lot of the time in the wild, a natural way to go is actually not being able to grind your food up anymore. So thank you for bringing that in. That is now in Gareth's hands, and he's, like I say, he's going to use this relic to channeling
my inner mammoth
spirit of the elephant. Yeah. So yeah, Gareth's going to take on the role of an Asian elephant. I'm going to pose him questions relating to the life history, the life biology of the species,
and see how quick I die.
Yeah, depending on his answers, that's going to dictate how long he survives as a member of the Asian elephant
I
species.
don't have a great track record in these.
No, you don't. I have faith in you, however, and I need to kind of say this disclaimer, which is not to put extra pressure on you, and hopefully it will motivate you. But yeah, I have to say that the nature of life as an elephant anywhere in the world is wrought with danger and risk, and it's not a particularly pleasant life. In fact, if you were to be reincarnated as an animal, I would probably avoid elephants of any nationality, tigers, and wolves that are in America. It's extremely, exceedingly, extraordinarily dangerous to be an elephant. So I must warn listeners that should Gareth choose poor life choices, this creature feature could take a very dark turn into some details that could involve gory, gruesome, bloody, and to be frank, disturbing details. So there's your warning. Nothing will be too obscene. If we get any photos up, it won't be too obscene. But
no elephant carcass photos.
Yeah, it's just it can be a hard life for them. So Gareth, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, to set the scene, it's July.
Yep.
We're almost approaching the halfway point of the monsoon season. And we're in India. We're actually on the grasslands, in the grassland of India. Now these grasslands in particular are a hive of activity, because we find ourselves in the midst of a herd of Asian elephants. Now the atmosphere is one of excitement. It's almost celebratory. Lots of high energy, and that is because this herd is about to welcome its newest member. A young calf is about to be born, whose mother has the great wisdom and foresight to name the professor. So, Gareth, you've been launched into this new world, a 100-kilogram dazed and confused lump.
Which is what I'm often called.
A bit of a warm-up question to get your feet wet. Who have you got around you?
So my thought would be matriarchal herd, so the mother, obviously, and the herd leader, depending on where they are in the herd. Obviously, if they're the matriarch, then, but still like one or two other individual adult females, and maybe curious in the younger individuals.
That's actually a really good answer. Yeah. So usually for Asian elephants, it's going to be mum plus one. So much like the samurai wanted to have a second with them when they commit seppuku, elephants want to have a second with them when they give birth. So I suppose it's not really much like samurai, because samurai are using a second person to take life, whereas elephants are using a second person as essentially a midwife. So you can forget that.
That's a good analogy, right there.
Forget that comparison. Forget that analogy. Just know that I certainly would rather be an elephant than a samurai. I don't know why samurai came into this. It's more likely that you're going to have mum plus one other. However, Gareth is a very lucky elephant indeed. He's been born with mum plus two or more elephants with him. So you have literally no worries right now. You're pretty safe. In fact, Asian elephants' social lives differ somewhat from African elephants in this, because and this is the one bit I'm going to pull Gareth up on, where you use the term matriarchal. So African elephants, we understand, have a matriarchal society. They're led by an elder female who leads basically her daughters and their calves. In Asiatic elephants, the herds are much smaller. There will be mum, obviously, but they are comparatively loose familial networks. And in fact, whilst the network of relationships could extend to as many elephants as you would find in an African elephant's herd, you wouldn't consider it a herd in Asian elephants. It's just loose friendships here and there, and
everyone's just chill, just hanging out.
The relationships are very fluid. The main herd is 2 or 3 adults with their calves, and then the males will either live solitary lives on the periphery of these herds, or they'll form bachelor herds again on the periphery of these herds. So not very big herds, unlike unlike African elephants, and not particularly matriarchal, although they are obviously female led. So there is that. So you've made it through the first vital moments of your life. You're starting to gain some strength. You stand within 20 minutes. Can you describe what happens if you don't stand within those first 20 minutes?
I'm guessing Mum starts kicking me to get up.
Yeah,
'Cause
you're
if
gonna
you-
get a kicking.
As you say, if you don't get up, that's kind of game over at that point.
You're gonna get a hiding.
Yeah.
That's a paddling. Yeah, it looks a lot more violent than it actually is. It's done for several reasons, whether to kickstart like the heart, the lungs, kickstart the breathing, get some like any of the fluids out, or just to kind of wake up, lazy bones, get up, get off your feet. So yeah, within 20 minutes, the first 20 minutes of life, these guys can stand up, which I think is really impressive for a 100-kilogram animal that has just been brought into the world. And within the first hour, they're up and they're walking. So again, I find that's really impressive. So now that you're mobile, again, a bit of a warm-up question. What do you think is the first thing on your mind?
Well, food, milk.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to be feeding, and you've actually answered the next warm-up question, which is what you'd be eating. You're quite right. You'd be consuming mother's milk. Now, how much milk will you consume in a day?
Of like a litre a sitting, so I'm going to say somewhere around 6 litres a day.
Okay, but that's not bad. That's a little bit shy of where we want to be, but you've just been born. So maybe you're just one of those fussy babies that doesn't quite get how to latch just yet. So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, and you'll have a couple days, and you'll build up. But you should be consuming about 8 to 11 liters of milk per day. So there's quite a bit, and you'll be suckling, contrary to what a lot of people believe, you'll be suckling with your mouth. Elephants don't suckle with their trunk and then pass the milk to their mouth in the same way that weaned elephants will pass water from trunk to mouth. They do suckle with their mouth, just the same as any other mammal, like lambs or anything. So there's that. Now this is the start of a lifetime of growth for you, continuous growth. So once weaned, it's important to identify the correct food items and foodstuffs for you and your herd. Now, luckily, you'll be guided by your herd. You'll be guided by your mama to what to eat. But what do you think you'll be looking for?
Well, it's going to be a good amount of plants, obviously. They're not going to be eating Mars bars.
Nope.
I mean, they might do. But sort of a good amount of grasses, sort of grazing, especially if it's an open grassland sort of area. Any sort of nice green juicy plants like bananas or stuff like that. I'd imagine any sort of farmer's crop that gets a bit too easy to access, things like peas, to bulk up on like protein and that to grow. Any fruits, vegetables, pretty much anything, I'd imagine, that's nice and green and vegetative.
No, you've covered a lot of ground there. Actually, you've covered a pretty huge list. Asian elephants are generalists, which is a dietary habit that is probably a credit to their survival. Really, nobody wants to be a specialist and then not be able to adapt quick enough to change an environment. So, at this time of year, experiencing the dry season, you and your family will mostly maintain yourselves off of true grasses and grass like sedges. Oh, and also tree bark. You'll be stripping trees of their bark as well to get the nutrients you need. So now you're on solid foods and you know how to identify which foods you should be targeting, and what you find appetizing. How much do you think you need to eat per day? And I'll give you an over under 200 kilograms.
Just over.
Just over 200
Just
kilograms.
over.
So you might actually be making up for your milk deficit now, because actually it's a little bit under. the average intake of an Asian elephant per day is about 150 kilograms of plant matter. That is enough to keep you going. It's enough for you to maintain a healthy weight and healthy energy levels. Now, do you think that sounds time consuming?
I mean, yes, in the sense that it's going to take time, but no, in the sense that elephants are essentially a walking Hoover for food, and that's not just because they've got a trunk, but they could walk along and just pass food into their mouth, kind of like a cow does, just walks along and grazes, walks and grazes, and presumably it doesn't take all of their day, but probably a good chunk of it.
Yeah, you've described that really well. They are a crepuscular species, so they're most active during the dawn and dusk hours. They don't actively spend a lot of time having a meal the way we would think of it, but they spend about 75% of their waking time foraging. So that's moving through their range, and consuming on the move, basically. Now, as the dry season makes way for the monsoons once again, your diet is going to start to look different. And you've already kind of answered this question, so I'm just going to go straight into it because you've identified the foodstuffs really well. So, the more kind of juicy elements of what Gareth listed as a diet,
Fleshy plants.
the fleshy plants, yeah. That's now during the monsoons is when you're going to be consuming those. So you're going to be looking for things with ample moisture, as you said, as you mentioned or alluded to, things which have a bit of protein in them.
Yeah.
So we're talking about legumes, which I think you mentioned.
Yep.
Palms, malvales, or mavalis.
Malvel sounds right.
Malvales, I think that's a group of flowering plants. And I've struggled with that, and that's a really simple word compared to some of the other words that we get to say on this podcast. And you'll gorge yourself on fruit, like you quite rightly said, bananas being one of them. In fact, I've seen Asian elephants be handed or hand themselves big banana plants.
Yeah.
They'll take the bananas off and consume them, and then they'll crush and consume the trunk.
Well, I mean, when both of us were at the zoo, I used to grow banana palms.
Yes, you did.
To feed out to multitudes of the different animals, and
yes, you did.
they
Yeah,
enjoyed everything from the leaves to the stalk to the fruit when it had it on it.
yeah, yeah. It's just impressive how. Well, actually, there's dual impressive. It's impressive how quickly they strip the banana plant down to nothing. But it's also impressive how within just a few hours that banana plant starts to sprout from the stump again. That really, when I witnessed that myself, that was impressive. So yeah, you've actually survived longer than I think you've ever survived in one of these types of creatures. You've successfully made it out of your first year alive, and you're going to spend the next 14 years of that life traveling and foraging and avoiding danger. But we're not quite at 14 years yet. You're at 6 years. So Gareth, your mother and aunt and their mother, you're all, as I heard, on the move. And as I say, you're 6 years old now, so you're a bit bigger now, and you can easily keep up with the herd. Suddenly, the march of the adults grinds to a halt. The forest has given way to a massive clearing. Now, in previous years, those trees that you see kind of miles off on the horizon there, they would have been right up to where you are now. It would have just been continuous, lush green forest. But now, between where your herd stands and where your herd wants to be, that continuation of your habitat lies basically churned up mud, smouldering tree stumps, and strange, brightly coloured, noisy machinery. Yeah. So, what are you looking at?
Well, it's either like a slash and burn sort of clearing for farming, or some sort of mining, the same sort of thing, basically. Slash and burn the area, either farm it intensely for a brief period of time, or strip mine the place, or housing, or a road, or something like that.
Yeah, you've pretty much covered a lot. In this case, we're looking at logging for timber. We're looking at basically deforestation for plantations and possibly even for mining. So yeah, not good in any way, shape, or form. So you now have a choice to make. Either you can go straight across this work site.
Right.
Now that has its risks, obviously.
Yeah.
It's going to bring you in close quarters with the machines and with a workforce.
Not the machines.
Yeah. However, it'll only take you a day.
Okay.
A day's travel, or you can head eastwards through basically staying in the forest, but going eastwards. Now this is going to be a really roundabout route. It's going to take you several days to complete, and it takes you away from the water sources. Water sources being very important to elephants. So which are you going to choose? You're going to go through the work site, or you're going to go around?
Well, I obviously wouldn't be making this call because I'm not the leader of the herd.
No, that is a flaw in this question. But you're going to take
So,
for the moment.
I
You're going to
will-
think as your grandmother.
Yeah, okay. My thought would be the most logical option is to go of an evening or of a night when there's no one there and just sort of head straight across. Make a beeline straight across as quickly as possible under the cover of night or under the cover of dusk, and just go around, because I would have thought the thought of not having the resources, the water side of it, would
very
be
important.
ingrained in them
Yeah.
because they would know where water sources are. So, yeah, getting across quickly would probably be the thought I would have gone with.
We're going to go with that. So Gareth has chosen to cross the work site
You have chosen
at the
poorly.
later end of the later end of dusk, and in doing so, he's actually made it across pretty safely. What I will do is I'll just run you through the other options, just so that you can get an idea for what could have happened.
What could have happened?
If
You
you've gone
stepped on a
across-
landmine and died.
Well, actually, that's a good point. Landmines are a serious problem for Asian elephants. And you'll find in some sanctuaries in Asia, across Southeast Asia, you'll find that there are some individual elephants that might be missing portions or entire portions of the legs or entire limbs, which is incredibly sad. Luckily, these sanctuaries are there; they can house them and look after them. But it is a continued risk for them, and that's because of border fighting and
Many years
skirmishes
of war in
and
different places, yeah.
Not a happy human history
Well,
there.
I mean, we just said that in the news is wars affecting where eagle
Yeah, that's
migrations
true.
are going.
That's
So it very easily affects animals that have to walk through some of these areas.
Yeah. So
How badly did I die then?
well, no, choosing to go across the work site at night, or shall we say towards the later end of the the dusk hours, sorry. That was a wise decision. You've got across safely. I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt that there was no workforce there. So you're surviving pretty well this episode.
It's a Friday afternoon. They'd all knocked off early.
Yeah, they're all down the pub. Had you gone across earlier, you would have come into direct conflict with the workforce. And now what that means for you in this case is there would have been a panic. There would have been a lot of noise, and your herd would have run, and they would have run to the nearest patch of trees. That is to the west of you. So it's neither your origin point, it's not your destination point, and it's not the best detour around.
Right.
And what it does, in fact, is lead you into the territory of a Bengal tigress.
Of course.
Who is a new mother supporting some cubs. Now, you've been chased into her. Not you haven't. You would have been chased into her in the ruckus, in the chaos. Your aunt would have become injured, cut on the leg from a machine that she would have damaged. You would have been chased in by some revenge-minded humans. You would have come across a tiger. I was going to have you predated on by the tiger. I was going to have your aunt. Your aunt was going to succumb to the infection of the cut. And then, unfortunately, upon finding your herd and slaughtering them, the men would have then found the tigress and her cubs and set to slaughtering them too, because that's what humans do. So luckily you made a decision that has protected the entire ecosystem, because it all hinged on you making that fateful decision. If you'd gone eastwards, that would have taken days to complete, and you would have suffered without the water. It would really have slowed you down. Elephants need water daily. You'd had to grind on. You would have been lucky to survive. But I rate you as surviving just about. You would still have come to a clearing in the forest, although albeit not very big, about the size of a field, because you would have come across a farm.
Okay.
And that farm would have been growing crops. It would have been very juicy, very tempting for you. You would have raided those crops.
Yeah.
The farmer would have kicked off about it, and you would have left a bad taste in his mouth, and a lack of tolerance towards your species in future. Luckily, you've gone across best time of night, best time of the day for you, and you've come across no problems. So that's
Hooray!
pretty good.
I
You've done it. You're now traipsing through the lush green forest on the other side, your destination point, and you start to notice strange markings cut into the trees. Now, will you investigate these markings, or will you ignore them and continue onwards?
I think as an elephant, as inquisitive as an animal I am, I don't think that's going to be of any concern, because it could be. I mean, are we talking man-made markings, or are we talking like claw marks from a tiger?
No,
that's sharpening
they
its
are
claws?
man-made markings, so they're not.
I
They're
mean, either
not.
way, I don't think an elephant's going to be
No,
interested.
they're not portraying some sort of large carnivore, although they are dangerous, if not more so, because these markings. By the way, you've done absolutely the right thing to ignore.
Hooray!
They're absolute to an elephant. They're absolute nonsense. They mean nothing, but to a person, a particular type of person, they mean a lot. These are poacher markings, and they're carved into the trees, basically arrows, tally marks, and like. And it's actually quite a sophisticated hieroglyphic kind of shorthand language, which tells poachers in the area exactly where to go. Things like how many miles to the nearest poacher camp. Things like what directions to follow and stuff like that. So they represent a massive danger to you, but luckily you've 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 ignored it and you've carried right on your journey. This means that your herd has safely passed through this stretch of forest, and they've entered one of 33 elephant reserves spread across India. Now, these have a combined spread of 80,778 kilometers squared. So it's not the biggest, most ideal expanse.
No, but it's not tiny.
It's not tiny either. It's a big space, and it can be found across 14 Indian states. Now, these were created by Project Elephant. Have you heard of Project Elephant?
I have not. No.
Some people will have, some people won't have. It's a wildlife conservation organization or effort that was initiated by India in 1992 to protect its elephant populations. Its founding can be credited to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of the government of India, who began with a very simple aim of providing states with free ranging elephant herds in the financial and technological. Imagine having difficulty with that word. Financial and technological support necessary to protect these elephant dedicated reserves, the wildlife corridors that stitch them together, and the elephant populations that reside in them. So it's a really important effort. But that's not all that they do. And I'm going to briefly do a quick rundown of some of the things they do. So they aim to mitigate human-elephant conflict, which is
A big
really
thing.
important. Yeah, and it's getting bigger because as we encroach further and further and they lose more and more of their habitat, and also as we farm more and more of these juicy and very tempting crops, they're coming into contact with us more and more. And it almost always leads to elephants dying, and sometimes it leads to humans dying, and we don't want either of those things happening in the ideal world. So yeah, they aim to mitigate human elephant conflict. They support conservation with infrastructure such as patrol teams, veterinary facilities, and providing capture and translocation resources. So things like equipment and training and financial resources to be able to capture problem elephants and move them. And not just problem elephants, but injured elephants, and maybe even breeding, so moving them to keep the breeding diversity clean. Um, they also promote the welfare of captive elephants, and they do this. They, they include in this, but not limited it to, the continual training of mahouts and zookeepers to make sure that elephants in captivity get the best of treatment and have the most updated minds looking after
Yeah.
them. Which again, it just shows the importance of having good functional captive populations to
Bolster the
engage
numbers.
you guys in, and yeah, bolster the numbers, act as a genetic reservoir. They also have a project that is very much the James Bond or the MI6. Is it MI6 or MI4? It's MI6. The MI6 of elephant conservation. It's called Mike, and it stands for the monitoring of illegal killing of elephants. Now, Mike aids in decisions that put patrol teams on the ground in these regions where elephant poaching occurs and elephant conflict occurs. It gathers intelligence on situations that are happening, and it maintains data on poaching trends and contributing factors with the purpose of preventing them, avoiding them, mitigating them. So Mike is a really important kind of aspect of what Project Elephant does. So as you can see, there's lots going on to save the Asian elephant in India. And again, Gareth's herd is in India. But if we take a more global view of them just briefly, they are protected by CITES Appendix 1, which means that they are classified as an endangered animal. And as such, this is a species whose commercial trade is prohibited, and its non-commercial trade is extremely restricted.
Yeah.
Both incredibly good things. Its position in the public zeitgeist as a charismatic and popular animal also has benefits, not just for the elephant itself, but for the wider ecosystem.
Well, it's very easy to get people to care about an elephant.
It is indeed. And we actually use them as umbrella species, both in the in situ conservation world and the ex situ conservation world, like zoos and stuff. You use them as an umbrella species so that everything underneath that umbrella gets protected, and that includes the fish that live in the river, the water systems in those areas. It includes the insects, some of which there may be entire species living on just one type of tree. It includes all the mammal fauna, reptiles, things that you wouldn't even think about, plants. And there are many great examples of umbrella species. Polar bears in the Arctic, tigers
in India.
again,
Yeah.
and elsewhere in Asia. And of course, probably the most famous one because of the World Wildlife Fund is
Pandas.
pandas. So yeah, umbrella species are incredibly important, and Asian elephants act as them, and African elephants too. So yeah. Furthermore, to raise awareness of the plight of the elephant outside of Asia, World Elephant Day was set up, and it occurs annually on the 12th of August every year. And it basically is aimed at events that raise awareness about elephants' lives, about the struggles that they face, and what we're doing to try and preserve this species and help them out. Yeah. Now America takes this one step further by actually dedicating the entire month of August to Asian elephants. So World Elephant Day is elephants generally, but the rest of August is Asian elephants specifically. Now, if we zoom back in from our global view back to kind of the Asian region there, we can see some initiatives across the elephant range itself. So in China, the Yunnan prefecture has about 300 elephants living there, and they're using some really novel approaches to keeping them safe, such as planting elephant tempting crops away from human settlements to draw them to that instead of to the farms. In much the same way as Gareth has spoken about before, having sacrificial plants in front of his veg to keep the slugs and snails at bay.
Doesn't always work, but yeah, the principle is quite sound.
I assume it doesn't always work with this, but it's a good one either way. Now Myanmar currently has one of the largest populations of Asian elephants, but also the largest expanse of unspoiled Southeast Asian elephant habitat, and it is incredibly delicate. We could lose it very quickly, and unfortunately, what's happening is as it's becoming harder and more protection is put in place in other parts of the range, Myanmar is being targeted as a place where you can get your elephants, and there's a loophole in the law where basically elephant parts that are harvested from captive elephants are legal to own and trade in. So people go to Myanmar, whereas usually they're stopped at the border. Like if you sell over into China, your parts are stopped at the border. So these clients in China are coming into Myanmar, buying the stuff there, and then as they cross the border, they're saying it came from captive elephants. It's an incredibly awful loophole in the law. So yeah, if essentially if China strengthened their border security, it would actually have a huge impact upon Myanmar's trade and the safety of their population there. Thailand also has 69 national parks, which protect elephants. And though they have not been without challenge, the parks hold more than 3,000 elephants between them. So
that's pretty impressive.
Pretty good number. Now, if you had chosen Gareth to follow those markings on those trees, which you didn't, we're glad of. So I'm just going to briefly run through what would have happened. And this is the
How
bit
dead
where
would I have been?
it can be a little bit gory, this part. So the likelihood is you would have been shot with an arrow laced in the herbicide.
Oh yeah.
It would have taken 2 or 3 days to bring you to the ground. At which point, it's kind of unclear how they dispatch of Asian elephants. However, with African elephants, they'll cut the tendons so that you can't move and struggle and hurt the poachers in your struggle, in your death throes, so to speak. They'll also cut the trunk so that you bleed out quicker.
Oh.
So it's really harrowing way to go.
Yeah.
Not very nice at all. We'll discuss that in a future creature feature. That is the story of the African elephant, not the Asian elephant. What is clear about Asian elephants, however, is that Gareth was not killed by opportunity. Someone has already paid for your life. It's not that you were selected, it's that someone's already paid for an elephant and you happened to be there that day. Which you didn't, because you ignored the markings.
Oh right, I was going to say, well, hang on, wait. Somebody's targeting me from where now?
No, you didn't. You're safe. But if you had hung around in that area, there's a chance you would have ended up this way. So yeah, it's not just ivory that's taken from Asian elephants these days. So ivory is still a major concern, but also they're now hunting for skins. The poachers will take.
Imagine elephant skin's that good.
No, but what they'll do is they'll dry elephant skin, grind it into a powder, mix it with.
Of course.
Yeah, they'll mix it with elephant fat, or failing that, just any old oil.
Right.
To create a eczema miracle cure.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. I've suffered from eczema. I don't want.
I don't want an elephant dying. Ground up elephant on you.
No need for that. So yeah, they'll do that to treat other dermatological challenges as well. Also, some parts of the skin are, and this is really grim, I think, they're polished into little translucent beads, and these beads are worth more depending on how many blood vessels you can see in them. So the more evidence of this bead being from a dead animal, the higher value it is. It's really awful.
They've heard of glass marbles, right? Yeah. Those have been a thing for a while now.
And then, as Gareth mentioned pretty early on in the creature feature, feet are taken as furniture.
Yeah.
And what you might not have known is that the tail is also harvested
as a fly swat, like a.
I saw mention of that, but the one that's a bit weirder is that it's taken as a talisman to ward off dark spirits. One would argue that an elephant being killed by a human for its parts to be harvested to satisfy some sicko's lust for elephant parts is pretty much darkness incarnate.
Yep.
So one would argue that either the elephant needs that more than you do, or that perhaps that talisman doesn't work, and maybe it's just an elephant's tail.
Well, it worked as a better talisman attached to the elephant.
Speaking of which, how's your talisman is actually working because so far you've survived. So yeah, the other thing about that I'll just mention briefly is that it'll be your entire herd that's wiped out.
Oh,
It won't just be one elephant; it'll be an entire herd wiped out. So you've actually done really well, Gareth. You've made it this far, and the extreme first few years of your life have forged a solid bull elephant out of you. I'm not talking just physically, although it's true that you're now unlikely to have even tigers bother you, but mentally too. You know the routes, you know your water sources, you know your foods, um, and you know your family. Uh, you're also aware of predators. You know how to protect youngsters around you, but humans are encroaching further and poachers are becoming more advanced. Luckily, though, you're experienced enough to avoid much of this risk. When you hit 15 years of age, your growth is going to slow down. But once you hit about 20, males only, are going to hit another kind of explosive growth burst. And that's when you're starting to pack on the weight for the rut and for breeding. And so I'm just going to very briefly go through what's going to happen. You've basically been the lucky 50% that gets to 15 years old, and now you're working on being that lucky 20% that reaches 30. And you're a pretty tough elephant. You're going to be entering must at this point. It's a period named for the Persian word for intoxicated, which is a pretty good descriptor because you're intoxicated on hormones and other chemicals. Your body's literally drowning in high volumes of it. The hormone testosterone is 60 to 140 times higher than normal, and temporin is being secreted from your temporal glands here. That's what you see being secreted in elephants, and it runs down the face and basically drips into your mouth.
lovely.
And you're going to express yourself during this time with heightened sexual behaviors and heightened aggression.
Cool.
Extremely heightened aggression. And there's a couple reasons for this. We think that it could be a reaction to that temporin dripping into your mouth and you having a reaction from it. But also, they think that the swelling of the temporal glands is actually putting the pressure on the eyes, which is so painfully intolerable. It's like a severe toothache. So you're just in a bad mood, a really bad mood.
Yep.
And you want to hit someone for it. And you're experiencing this during the monsoon season when the rains are heaviest.
Yeah.
So during this time, you will bellow out what is called a must rumble. And this is a very low frequency rumble, lasting about 3 to 4 seconds and traveling several kilometers. And hopefully, you're going to get replied to by a female who is in season. Males that are smaller than you will ignore it, and females that are not in heat will ignore it too. Further reproductive communication is then carried out via pheromones in your urine and in the urine of females in heat. So you'll be able to tell a lot from sniffing out patches of the environment that have been soiled. There will be a lot of pheromones distributed in your urine and in the temporal secretion, but the main one is frontalin.
Never heard of that.
No, it but basically this will upload your reproductive data to the environment for a female to download later on. Also, information about rival males will inevitably be found, and this will lead to basically a rut-in fight in which you two will wrestle for mating rights over females in a herd. Now, these female counterparts will experience hormone surges of their own. Primarily, I'm going to need to read this one because this is a hard one. Luteinizing, I think it's luteinizing hormone, which basically that's
luteinizing hormone.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's the hormone that stimulates ovulation, basically. And once males detect this, it stimulates the olfactory sensors in the Jacobson's organ, providing the bull elephant with all the information necessary about this prospective cow elephant. And all going well, mating will take place during the second part of the rainy season, and the professor will sire 22 months later progeny that you can be proud of. So yeah, that's about that's that's about it. That it's a huge creature feature.
Survive.
There's so much more to say. You did survive, which is amazing. There is more to the Asian elephant than that. Their cultural significance, their evolutionary history.
It's a bit like the coelacanth, really. There's so much.
There's so much I wanted to cover in this, and I had to cut it out. But yeah, that's the Asian elephant in an incredibly big nutshell.
Well, before I die, because I still don't
You've
think
done very well. You've done very well.
I'm still waiting for like an asteroid falls out of the air and crushes you there and then. Before I die, let's move on to our email, shall we?
Let's do it.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
Right, well, we're into this week's emails, and we're going to kick things off with last week's question, which was, what is your favourite fish species? Which we got a few different answers for this one.
Yeah,
I
nice
honestly,
answers too.
I didn't think many people were going to have a favourite fish, but I like it. I like it. You got the first one there. Came in on Instagram.
Yeah,
actually.
this one came in on Instagram, which is nice that people are using our other social media channels. Because it makes it evident that it's worthwhile for us to keep these things going. And this one comes to us from one of our Patreon supporters, actually, and that's Chelsea McKee. And Chelsea writes, "Hi guys, I'm finally answering a podcast question in a timely manner. I always mean to, and then I blink and the week has gone by."
Tell me about it.
Yeah, that's the story of our editing and our prep work too. Like, you think you got all the time in the week, and then no, it's recording day. It's not that bad. Today you asked about favorite fish, and there are so many good ones, but I'm going to go with the gar, which I think is a really cool fish. Some varieties can be found in our local Midwest waterways. As a kid, swimming in lakes and rivers, I found their toothiness fascinating and a bit scary. It wasn't until recent years that I learned more about their unique biology, like their scaly armor and the ability to gulp air from above the water. I'll link the interview to listen to with the guy that studies them. Too cool. Anywho, I better go before I ramble on indefinitely. Keep up the great work, guys. I love hearing you every Sunday. Take care. Well, thank you very much, Chelsea. And what a wicked answer. Gar is a very cool fish.
Yeah, they're just for anyone that might confuse them, possibly people in Australia, where a gar is a marine fish that has like a long little bill. They're about that sort of length. Really nice to eat, actually. I can remember catching them as a kid. They are totally different. The gar that she's talking about is a North American river species that they're really, really funky looking fish. A bit more like a pike, if anything.
I was going to make that analogy.
In where the way they look. So Jen Babs has put, I like sticklebacks because they remind me of being a child. Sharks are pretty phenomenal. Archerfish, according to my hubby. Sailfish, because they're so speedy. But it's a tricky question, though. And there's a lot to pick. There's some good ones there. I like sticklebacks. And archerfish are pretty cool as well.
Yeah. Oh, archerfish are very cool. Very, very cool. Check them out on the YouTube if you get a chance. So now from Robin Clark. I don't know why, but I like mahi. I also love marlin, barracuda, fresher sharks, and lemon sharks. The list goes on. Well, lemon sharks too, but fresher sharks are awesome.
Yeah, they're pretty funny.
We named those in the shrimp creature feature because they too can do that cavitation bubble, but with the tail whip. Tail. Amazing.
So my other half has put cod. Tastes fantastic. I knew she was going to do that. Knew full well she was going to do
that. And my next one comes from Zara Jackson, who has also listed archerfish. She says archerfish are pretty cool. They are very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Stephen Eddy has put the Yangtze paddlefish. Oh bugger! It's extinct. In my lifetime. I won't repeat what he's put after that. But yeah, the paddlefish are absolutely stunning fish. They are weird looking. And unfortunately, the Yangtze one is now extinct, essentially. And the North American one is still going strong-ish. But they are another prehistoric fish like the gar as well. Now I don't know whether you've been to the Wild Place project, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
Do they have an aquarium set up there yet, or not? Because I
No.
still haven't been it after all this time.
Have you not?
No, I
That,
haven't.
maybe that's a podcast outing.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's a really, really good place.
Because I wonder what happened to theirs. They had paddlefish and garfish in the aquarium in Bristol Zoo, if you
Yes,
remember.
you did, yeah.
I used to love just watching that tank. Paddlefish are absolutely stunning looking fish. Bizarre as anything, but I love them.
As far as I remember, there wasn't an aquarium set up there yet.
Yeah. I wonder where
no.
they've gone.
And then finally, Stuart Beard nominates the Pedium pollitum for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prehistoric species of fish.
But I don't have a clue what it is.
He likes, well, it's a Jurassic era fish.
Right.
And well, knowing Stuart, he likes to go fossil hunting. So yeah. So those are some really good answers for that. This week, based on your elephantine creature feature, we're going to talk about the elephant in the room. I've been waiting to slip that one in. In fact, the question is going to be a poll instead. It's going to be, what is your favorite species of elephant? So there's 3 to choose from. There is obviously the Asian elephant, which I think you are probably going to vote for. That's your thing. We've also got the African bush elephant or African savanna elephant. I've always called it a savanna elephant, but apparently everyone now calls it a bush elephant.
Bush elephant, yeah.
And then the other one is the African forest elephant.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the ones that you'll find in like Congo and
I didn't really
that live near the same sort of habitat. You get lowland gorillas into the bais and that in the forest there.
I didn't really, in fact, I don't think I mentioned the African forest elephant at all. I know I've mentioned the bush elephant. But there's an interesting relationship between the 3 currently extant species and I think the 4 potentially extant species. So what I've actually done is I've confused my wording a bit there over years of forgetfulness and clumsiness. But basically, what I was gonna say is the closest relative of the Asian elephant, as I said in the creature feature, is the woolly mammoth.
Yep.
But out of the 2 African elephants, the one that is closer to the Asian elephant is the forest elephant.
But still,
it's on the Loxodonta branch.
Yeah, because it's Loxodonta africana and Loxodonta cyclotid.
Yes, whereas Asian elephant is Elephas maximus.
Yeah.
So basically, if you were to look at the tree growing up like that, you would see that there's a common ancestor. They divide.
Mm-hmm.
This branch is the common ancestor of the mammoth and the Asian elephant. They split and become those 2. Then this branch, it splits, and you have on one kind of sub branch, you've got the African forest elephant and the straight tusked elephant.
Paleoloxodon.
Yep. Yeah. And then on this branch, on its own, is the African bush elephant.
On his own.
So what I should have said is that the African forest elephant is the closest of the 2 African elephants to the Asian elephant, but still very much distant. And also, you
realize I'm going to throw in a whole family tree up there.
Yeah.
Just now.
The Asian the Asian elephant's closest relative is the woolly mammoth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting familial relationship they got going on there.
So I have no idea which one I'm going to vote for. I'm going to stay out of this one, actually.
Yeah, you're very much on the fence, aren't you?
I like African elephants. I like Asian elephants. I like the forest elephant as well. They're all quite good, but I don't have one that if I had to pick one, it was probably going to be the African bush elephant, to be honest. Mostly because the one male that I can remember seeing at Port Lim, I want to say his name was Jambo.
Yes, that rings a bell. I think it is Jambo.
He is a giant elephant to such a degree that it didn't seem real what I was looking at when I got up close to him. He was over I think he was over 10 foot tall. He was huge, like absolute. I think he's dead now from old age. He died a couple of years ago, but he was an absolute monster of an elephant.
Mm.
I could be wrong, and I hope he's not dead. I hope he's still going strong. But yeah, he was a monster of an elephant.
I swing more towards leaning on the Asian elephants. And
Obviously,
yeah, well, when we come to do African elephants, I'm gonna wax
you're
as
gonna go back
lyrically.
the other way.
No, I won't. I won't ever change my mind, I don't think. But I'll wax just as lyrically about them, because when I say the Asian elephant is my favorite, I mean like it just ekes it out. Like
Okay.
elephants are just fantastic. And in future, the only thing that might change my mind is that in future, my favorite elephant might actually walk this planet with us again.
You want the mammoth?
But I'm actually now, having spoken to Professor Andrew Pask about thylacine and having a bit more interest in that kind of thing and being a bit more open to it and looking into it, I actually do think we are very realistically looking at the return of thylacines, dodos, and mammoths.
Yeah,
To-
yeah.
Pros and cons to all three of them. Obviously, more pros to the thylacine, but
Check out that episode.
yeah,
anyway. It's a
do
really
check
good
out
one.
check out the thylacine creature feature and the interview with
Mm.
Professor Andrew Pask. But I do see a world where we're going to have mammoths again. In what capacity, I don't know. But Asian
Yeah.
elephants for me, I've had experience working with both. I found Asian elephants were more rewarding. I've worked with them very briefly, both species, so don't take my word as anything other than the nonsense that I'm saying. But that's my opinion. I will say that I think Asian elephants are more intelligent and African elephants are more aggressive, which is what makes Asian elephants so much easier to work with. One
Suppose.
thing I did want to go over, which I never got to because of time constraints, is both species being used in war. And African elephants refused to fight Asian elephants because they found the Asian elephants terrifying, and that's true. That was the Persians that were involved in that one.
Well, when we get to
yeah.
the African elephant creature feature, I'm sure we can look into domestication and things like that.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
I go with Asian elephant.
Hmm.
The gentle giant.
Well, let us know what you think. The poll is up on Facebook, and we'll be there for the week, and we'll see which elephant comes out on top in this weird sort of stack of elephants. But there are a multitude of ways that you can get in contact with us. You can either get in contact with us on Facebook, where we post things every day throughout the week, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on YouTube as well. But you can also get in contact with us and be a bit more interactive if you want by becoming one of the members of our Patreon, which Aaron's going to tell us about now.
That's right, Gav. Every week we like to give a little love back by shouting out the names of our wonderful Patreon supporters. These are the cupboard dwellers who are kind enough to support us through a monetary contribution, for which we're grateful beyond words. And those people are, of course, Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea McKee, Nick to Nick, and Justin Knife. Guys, your financial contributions, they are actively helping us to develop our product here in the Natural History Cupboard in a myriad of ways, including developing a makeshift studio. Although you didn't like it when I said makeshift last week.
Makeshift.
But developing this studio, planning excursions, which by the time you listen to this, we would have been on one, and we'll get back to you on that. Considering technical upgrades such as a new webcam, and actually making the jump from a solely audio-based podcast format to YouTube. So yeah, we really can't thank you enough. Now, we appreciate all of our cupboard dwellers and the support you offer us through listening, liking, sharing, and subscribing. But if you feel we've earned it and you're considering joining our Patreon, there are two options at the moment through which you can do so, and that is our nature nerds and our animal ambassadors. But yeah, once again, thank you very much for your support. It means the world to us.
Yeah. And like I say, there are other ways that you can get in contact, other ways that you can help us out. Not everything is financially based. In fact, you can do some really simple things to help us out. First one is, well, like, subscribe, comment, all of that sort of stuff on whatever you are listening and or watching us on. If you're watching us on YouTube, ring a bell, press subscribe, all of those sort of things. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcasting app, you can, well, give us 5 stars, write a review, anything like that. And then recommend us as well is a really big thing. Podcasts and anything like this live and die on the word of mouth being spread around, like the virus that it sounds like in that sort of way. So spread us around like a horrific virus.
Spread it around the way that Britain spread COVID.
But yeah, let everyone know. Tell your friends. Tell your friends. Tell an enemy. Tell an elephant as it walks into a clearing and feels like it's about to be hit by a meteorite, because it's fairly certain the whole thing was a trap. But yes, that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode. So a big thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. It's been great. And as
Been a
Gareth
good one.
said, any interaction's good interaction. So even if you just go on one of our videos and just say, hi, guys, we will do our best to respond.
Yes. Yeah. And well, thank you at home for listening and or watching. And we'll see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
Bye. One does not simply eat a banana plant. One inhales the banana plant.